The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound. Ambassador Li Haiyan walked inside, his black diplomatic suit standing out against the colorful alien beings that filled the enormous room. The chamber was bigger than any building on Earth, with curved walls that reached up so high they seemed to touch the stars themselves. Li Haiyan had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Ever since humanity made first contact with the galactic civilizations, this day had been coming. Today, the Galactic Council would decide if humans were worthy to join the Galactic Defense Coalition. Today, they would judge if humanity deserved a place among the stars. The ambassador's footsteps echoed as he walked down the long pathway to the center of the chamber. On both sides, representatives from 12 different alien species watched him. Some had scales like ancient dragons. Others looked like walking crystals that glowed with inner light. A few appeared to be made of pure energy, floating in the air like living lightning. None of them looked friendly. Li Haiyan reached the speaking platform in the center of the chamber. Above him, the council speaker floated in a sphere of blue light. The speaker was ancient, older than human civilization itself, and had seen thousands of species rise and fall across the galaxy. "The human representative may observe," the speaker announced in a voice that sounded like wind through metal. "Today we decide the fate of species designation human, Earth origin." Sol system? Li Haiyan nodded and remained silent. He had learned that in galactic politics, it was better to listen first and speak last. Commander Vexstar of the Draconian Empire rose from his seat. He was 9 feet tall with dark green scales that covered his entire body. His yellow eyes glowed as he looked down at Li Haiyan with obvious disgust. The Draconians were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, and their opinion carried great weight in the council. "Honored Council," Vexstar began, his voice deep and threatening, "I present evidence that the humans are not fit for the Defense Coalition. They are weak. They are cowards. They cannot be trusted to defend the galaxy." A holographic display appeared in the air above the chamber. It showed scenes from human history, battles where human armies retreated, wars where human leaders chose to surrender rather than fight to the death, conflicts where humans stopped fighting to care for their wounded enemies. "Look at this," Vexstar pointed at the display with one clawed finger. "In their war called World War II, human soldiers often retreated when facing stronger enemies. They chose to save their own lives rather than fight with honor." The display changed to show more recent events. Human peacekeepers leaving combat zones. Human diplomats choosing negotiation over military action. Human leaders avoiding conflicts that might cause casualties. "And here," Vexstar continued, "we see their true nature. When faced with the Terran-Martian border dispute, they chose to talk for months instead of fighting for days. When pirates attacked their trade routes, they paid bribes instead of destroying. The pirates, this is not the behavior of warriors. This is the behavior of cowards." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many of the alien representatives nodded their heads, or performed whatever gesture their species used to show approval. The representative from the Crystalline Collective rose next. Luxara was a being of pure energy contained within a crystal shell. Her voice sounded like singing glass when she spoke. "The Crystalline Collective has studied human behavior for 50 Earth years," she announced. "Our analysis confirms Commander Vexstar's assessment. Humans show consistent patterns of avoiding direct confrontation. They prefer indirect methods. They value individual survival over collective victory." Another holographic display appeared, showing charts and graphs of human military actions. In every major conflict, humans have shown a preference for minimal force application. They use only enough violence to achieve their immediate goals, then stop. This suggests a fundamental weakness in their warrior spirit. How can we trust such beings to defend the galaxy when they will not even defend themselves with full force? More aliens stood to speak against humanity. The insectoid hive clusters called humans individually weak and collectively indecisive. The machine intelligence known as the Nexus Council stated that humans had suboptimal combat algorithms and excessive emotional interference in tactical decisions. Each species presented evidence of human weakness. Each alien representative spoke of humanity's unwillingness to embrace total warfare. Each voice in the chamber added to the growing chorus of disapproval. Li Haiyan stood quietly through it all. His face showed no emotion as alien after alien dismissed his species as unworthy. He had expected this. The intelligence reports from Earth had warned him that this would happen. The aliens saw only the surface of human nature. They missed the deeper currents that ran beneath. Finally, after 2 hours of testimony against humanity, the council speaker addressed Li Haiyan directly. Human representative, you have heard the testimony of the council members. What is your response to these charges of cowardice and weakness? Li Haiyan stepped forward. His voice was calm and steady when he spoke. Honored council, I thank you for your thorough analysis of human behavior. I note that your observations are accurate within the limited scope of your study. Commander Vexstar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Limited scope? We have observed your species for decades. We know your true nature, human. Li Haiyan turned to face the draconian commander. With respect, Commander, you have observed humanity at peace. You have seen us when we choose restraint. You have witnessed our behavior when we decide that life is more valuable than victory. Exactly, Vexstar replied. You prove our point, you value life over victory, this makes you weak. Perhaps, Li Haiyan said quietly. Or perhaps it makes us careful about when we choose to show our true strength. The chamber fell silent. Something in the human's tone made even the most arrogant aliens pause. You see, honored council, there is something about humans that your analysis has missed. We are not weak because we choose restraint. We choose restraint because we understand the consequences of our strength. Luxara's crystal form flickered with confusion. Explain this statement, human. Li Haiyan looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every alien representative who would look back at him. Humanity has a saying. Speak softly and carry a big stick. We prefer peace because we know the true cost of war. We choose negotiation because we understand what happens when negotiation fails. We show mercy because we know what we become when mercy is no longer an option. The council speaker leaned forward in his sphere of light. Are you threatening this council, human? No, honored speaker. I am simply stating that your analysis is incomplete. You have judged us based on our behavior when we choose to hold back. You have never seen what happens when we choose to let go. Commander Vexstar stood to his full height, his scales bristling with anger. Empty words, human. Your species lacks the warrior spirit necessary for galactic defense. The council will vote, and you will be rejected, Li Haiyan nodded slowly. As you wish, Commander. But remember this day when you learn what humanity truly is. The vote was called. One by one, each species cast their decision. The Draconians voted no. The Crystalline Collective voted no. The Hive Clusters voted no. Every single alien species in the Council voted to reject humanity's application to join the Galactic Defense Coalition. The Council Speaker announced the final tally. 12 votes against. 0 votes in favor. The species designation human is rejected for membership in the Galactic Defense Coalition. Reason: insufficient warrior capacity and demonstrated cowardice in military applications. Li Haiyan listened to the verdict without reaction. When the formal announcement was complete, he bowed slightly to the council. Thank you for your consideration, honored council. I will relay your decision to Earth immediately. As he turned to leave, Commander Vexstar called out to him. Human, your species should stick to farming and trade. Leave the fighting to real warriors. Li Haiyan paused at the chamber doors. He looked back at the assembled aliens one last time. Commander, I hope you never have cause to regret those words. The massive doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder, alone in the corridor outside the chamber. Li Haiyan activated his secure communication device. The message he sent to Earth was brief and coded, but its meaning was clear to those who would receive it. Council vote complete. Application rejected unanimously. Reason given: insufficient warrior capacity. Recommend immediate activation of contingency protocol. They want to see what humanity is capable of. Show them the American nightmare. He ended the transmission and began the long walk back to his ship. Behind him, the alien representatives continued their celebration. Confident they had made the right decision about the weak, cowardly humans, none of them realized they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. President Park Ji-won sat in the Oval Office staring at the secure message display. The words glowed on the screen like a death sentence. The Galactic Council had rejected humanity unanimously. 12 alien species had looked at Earth and declared, "Humans too weak, too cowardly to join their defense coalition," she read Ambassador Lee Hyan's final line again. "Show them the American nightmare." The president pressed a button on her desk. Within minutes, her most trusted advisors began filing into the room. General Kim Tae-ho entered first, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. As chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he had been preparing for this possibility since first contact with the aliens. Dr. Song Min-young followed close behind. The head of the Xenological Studies Division carried a thick folder marked with the highest security classifications. She had spent years studying alien psychology and military doctrine. Her predictions about the Council's decision had been perfectly accurate. Admiral Cho Soo-jin was next through the door. The head of Space Naval Operations had overseen the secret construction of humanity's true space fleet. The ships the aliens had seen were just the beginning. The real fleet remained hidden in deep space facilities that no alien probe had ever discovered. Colonel Yoon entered last. She was younger than the others, but her reputation was legendary among those who knew the truth. She commanded the Nightmare Division, the most classified military unit in human history. Her soldiers existed in no official records, their weapons appeared on no inventory lists. Their training was so secret that even their families believed they worked ordinary jobs. President Park looked at each of them in turn. These 5 people held the future of humanity in their hands. "You've all seen the message from Ambassador Lee," she began. "The Council has made their decision. They think we're weak. They think we're cowards. They believe humans have no place among the warriors of the galaxy." General Kim nodded grimly. "Madam President, we expected this outcome. Our intelligence indicated that the aliens would judge us based on incomplete information. They see our restraint as weakness. They mistake our mercy for fear." Dr. Song opened her folder and pulled out several documents. "My analysis confirms that every alien species in the Council operates under a different philosophy of warfare. They believe in total commitment, maximum force, and victory at any cost. They cannot understand why humans choose to limit their own destructive potential, which is exactly why they're wrong about us," Admiral Cho said quietly. "They've never seen what happens when humans stop holding back. They've never witnessed what we become when we decide that restraint is no longer an option." President Park turned to Colonel Yoon. "Colonel, what is the current status of Project American Nightmare?" Colonel Yoon's expression remained perfectly neutral, but her eyes showed a cold intensity that would have frightened the alien council members. "All systems are operational, Madam President. The Nightmare Division has been ready for deployment for 18 months. Our equipment has been tested and proven. Our personnel are trained to the highest possible standard." She paused for a moment, then continued, "Madam President, with your permission, I would like to explain what the aliens don't understand about human warfare." The President nodded. "Proceed, Colonel." Colonel Yoon stood and walked to the large map display on the wall. With a few touches, it changed to show Earth's solar system and the surrounding star systems claimed by various alien species. "Every species in the Galactic Council fights according to their nature," she began. The Draconians are aggressive and direct. They charge into battle, roaring challenges and fighting with honor. The Crystalline Collective uses coordinated attacks with perfect precision. The hive clusters swarm their enemies with overwhelming numbers. She touched the display again, and it showed battle footage from various alien conflicts. All of these approaches are predictable. They follow patterns. They have rules. They operate within the bounds of what these species consider civilized warfare. The display changed to show human conflicts throughout history. Humans are different. When we fight for survival, we don't follow rules. We don't worry about honor or dignity or fair play. We use every advantage we can find. We exploit every weakness our enemies show us. We adapt faster than any other species in the galaxy. General Kim stepped forward. The aliens have observed human conflicts, but they've only seen us fighting. Other humans. They've never seen what we do to an enemy that threatens our entire species. Dr. Song pulled out another document. My psychological profiles indicate that humans have a unique capacity for controlled violence. Most species are either naturally peaceful or naturally aggressive. Humans can switch between the two states depending on the situation. The aliens think this makes us weak, Admiral Cho said. They don't understand that it makes us unpredictable. They expect us to behave like other species they've conquered. They expect us to follow the same patterns, make the same mistakes. President Park absorbed all of this information. She had known about Project American Nightmare since taking office, but the full scope of it still amazed her. The project represented humanity's true military doctrine, the complete abandonment of restraint when faced with existential threat. Explain. The 3 phases to me again, she said to Colonel Yoon. The colonel touched the display, bringing up a classified schematic. Phase 1 is demonstration. We show the enemy what we're capable of in a limited engagement. We use just enough force to make them understand that their assumptions about us were wrong. The display showed weapon systems that officially didn't exist, ships that were never built according to public records, technologies that violated several galactic treaties humanity had never signed. Phase 2 is escalation. If the enemy doesn't withdraw after the demonstration, we increase the level of force. We target not just their military assets, but their ability to make war, their supply lines, their communications, their command structure. More schematics appeared showing weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets, disrupt planetary communications, and cripple industrial infrastructure from light years away. Phase 3 is devastation. If the enemy still refuses to back down, we remove their ability to threaten humanity ever again. We don't just defeat their current forces. We eliminate their capacity to rebuild, rearm, and attack us in the future. The final schematic showed weapons that could crack planets, collapse stars, and sterilize entire solar systems. President Park stared at the display in silence for a long moment. Colonel, are you telling me that we have the ability to destroy entire civilizations? Yes, Madam President. But more importantly, we have the discipline not to use that ability unless we have no other choice. That's what the aliens don't understand about us. They think restraint is weakness. They don't realize it's the most dangerous thing about humanity. General. Kim stepped forward. Madam President, the Galactic Council has made their decision based on incomplete information. They've judged us without understanding what they're really dealing with. The question now is, do we correct their misunderstanding? Dr. Song closed her folder. From a psychological standpoint, the alien species need to see proof that their assessment was wrong. Words won't convince them. They need a demonstration of what human warfare actually looks like. Admiral Cho nodded in agreement. Our intelligence indicates that several alien species are already making plans to test human resolve. The Draconians, in particular, are likely to probe our defenses, expecting us to retreat or negotiate. President Park walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, alien civilizations were celebrating their victory over the weak, cowardly humans. They were making plans to expand into human space. Confident that Earth would offer no real resistance, she turned back to her advisors. How long would it take to implement American Nightmare if I gave the order? Colonel Yoon checked her watch. The Nightmare Division can be deployed within 6 hours, Madam President. Our deep space assets are already in position. Our systems are online and waiting for activation codes. And the target? We wait for them to make the first move, General Kim replied. When they do, we respond with overwhelming force. We show them what human warfare looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. President Park made her decision. She had sworn an oath to protect humanity, and that oath included protecting humanity from the consequences of other species. Mistakes, authorization granted, she said quietly. Activate Project American Nightmare, full deployment authorization. Rules of engagement, demonstrate, escalate, devastate as necessary. Colonel Yoon saluted. Understood, Madam President. The nightmare is awake. As her advisors filed out of the room, President Park remained at the window. The aliens thought they had judged humanity correctly. They thought they understood what humans were capable of. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In deep space, automated systems that had been sleeping for months suddenly came online. Hidden weapons platforms powered up their reactors. AI commanders that had been waiting patiently for orders began calculating target priorities. The American Nightmare was no longer a contingency plan. It was active, armed, and ready to show the galaxy what happened when humans stopped being nice. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council rejected humanity's application. Commander Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought called Death's Honor. Through the view screen, he could see the edge of human space, stretching out before him like an invitation to conquest. Behind him, 127 draconian warships waited in perfect formation. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could level cities. Each crew was trained from birth to fight and die for the glory of the Draconian Empire. This was the largest battle fleet the Draconians had assembled in 50 years. Commander, his second-in-command, Captain Zarthok, approached with a datapad. Final intelligence reports on the target system. The humans call it Kepler 442, one inhabited world. Designated New Sol, population approximately 50,000. Civilians. Vexstar examined the data with satisfaction. The human colony was exactly what he had expected, soft, peaceful, and poorly defended. Intelligence reports showed only a small defense fleet of 12 ships. Against his armada, they would be crushed like insects. What about military installations? Vexstar asked. Minimal, sir. Some orbital platforms for communication and trade. A few mining stations on the outer planets. No major fortifications. No evidence of serious military preparation. Vexstar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Perfect. This will be the test that proves our assessment of human cowardice was correct. When faced with overwhelming force, they will surrender or flee. The galaxy will see that humans have no place among warriors. The Draconian fleet moved into the Kepler 442 system like a tide of death. Their ships were beautiful in their own terrible way, with sleek hulls that looked like giant serpents swimming through space. Each vessel was painted in the traditional Draconian colors of deep red and gold, marking them as hunters and conquerors. On New Sol, alarm klaxons wailed. Across the colony, Captain Lim Jae-sung stood in the command center of the orbital defense station, watching his tactical display with growing concern. The Draconian fleet was massive, far larger than anything the colony's small defense force could handle. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Draconian flagship. Put it through, Captain Lim ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Commander Vexstar's imposing form. The Draconian commander's yellow eyes glowed with anticipation as he spoke. Human colony of New Sol, I am Commander Vexstar of the Draconian Empire. By right of conquest and superior military force, I claim this system for the Draconian Empire. You have 48 hours to evacuate all personnel and surrender all facilities. Any resistance will be met with total destruction. Captain Lim looked around his command center. His crew of 30 men and women stared back at him, waiting for orders. Most of them had families on the planet below. All of them had sworn to defend the colony. Open a channel, Captain Lim said quietly. The communications officer nodded. Channel open, sir. Captain Lim faced the screen and looked directly into Vexstar's eyes. Commander Vexstar, this is Captain Len Jae-sung, commanding officer of New Sol Defense Force. Your claim to this system is not recognized. This is human space established by legal colonization rights. You are not welcome here. Vexstar's laughter echoed through the command center. Captain, you have 12 ships. I have over 100. Your colony has 50,000 defenseless civilians. I have enough firepower to turn your world into molten glass. Surely even a human can understand these numbers. I understand them perfectly, Captain Lim replied. My answer remains the same. This is human space. You are not welcome here. The transmission ended abruptly. Vexstar turned to his tactical officer. Begin the attack. Target their defense ships first. Let's see how long human courage lasts against real opposition. The first engagement began exactly as Vexstar had predicted. The human defense fleet moved to intercept the Draconian forces, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The Draconian ships opened fire with devastating effect. Their plasma cannons tearing through human shields like paper. Captain Lim watched from his command ship as 2 of his vessels were destroyed in the opening minutes of the battle. The remaining human ships spread out, trying to use their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the Draconian weapons. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're taking heavy casualties. The enemy has us outgunned 10-1. Recommend immediate withdrawal to the inner system. Captain Lim nodded grimly. All ships, fall back to defensive positions around New Sol. We'll make our stand there. The human fleet retreated toward the planet, harassed by Draconian fighters the entire way. 3 more human ships were destroyed during the withdrawal, their crews dying as they covered the retreat of their comrades. Vexstar watched the human retreat with satisfaction. Exactly as predicted, he told his bridge crew. They run when faced with superior force, signal the fleet to pursue. We'll finish this quickly. But as the Draconian fleet moved deeper into the system, Captain Lim was sending a coded message to Earth. The transmission was brief and encrypted, but its meaning was clear to those who received it. American Nightmare Protocol activation confirmed. Package delivery requested, coordinates attached. The nightmare begins now? On Earth, Colonel Yundahi received the message in her command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She had been waiting for this moment for 3 months, ever since President Park had authorized the American Nightmare Project. All stations, this is Nightmare Command, she announced over the secure communication network. We have activation. Confirmation from Kepler 442. Enemy force size estimated at 127 vessels. Begin Phase 1 deployment immediately. Across the solar system, automated systems that had been waiting in silence suddenly came to life. Hidden weapons platforms powered up their reactors. Stealth ships that had been drifting like asteroids activated their engines. AI systems that had been dormant began calculating firing solutions for targets they had never seen back in the Kepler 442 system. The Draconian fleet closed in on New Sol. Commander Vexstar was already composing his victory message to the Galactic Council. The humans had fought bravely for a few minutes, but their resistance had collapsed exactly as he had predicted. Sir, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting new contacts entering the system. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. Vexstar frowned. Reinforcements? How many ships? Unknown, sir. The sensor readings are ... unusual. I'm detecting approximately 40 vessels, but their energy signatures don't match any known human ship class. Through the view screen, Vexstar could see the new arrivals. They were smaller than his dreadnoughts, but there was something different about them. They moved with an eerie precision like a school of mechanical fish. Their hulls were dark, almost black, and they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Receiving transmission from the lead vessel, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Vexstar ordered. The screen showed a human woman in a military uniform Vexstar didn't recognize. Her expression was cold, professional, and completely without fear. Commander Vexstar, she said in a voice like ice, this is Admiral Bei Sung-yan of the Earth Defense Force. You have attacked a human colony without provocation. You have killed human civilians and military personnel. You have violated human space. Admiral Bei paused for a moment, her eyes never leaving Vexstar's. You wanted to see human warfare, Commander. You wanted to test our resolve. You believed. We were weak and cowardly. You made a mistake. Vexstar scales bristled with anger. Admiral, you have 40 ships. I have over 100. Your species has already shown its weakness by retreating from our superior force. Surrender now, and I may allow your colony to evacuate. Admiral Bay's expression didn't change. Commander, there's something about humans that your intelligence reports failed to mention. We don't fight like other species. We don't follow the same rules. We don't show the same mercy. She leaned forward slightly and her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. When we fought each other, we held back. When we fought our own wars, we showed restraint. But you're not human, Commander. You're not one of us. And that changes everything. The transmission ended. Around the Draconian fleet, space began to fill with new contacts. Not ships, but something smaller and faster. Hundreds of them emerging from the black vessels like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. What are those? Vexstar demanded. His tactical officer stared at his displays in confusion. Unknown, sir. They appear to be unmanned fighters, but they're moving in patterns I've never seen before. They're not following any standard attack formation. Commander Vexstar was about to learn the first lesson of human warfare, when humans stop holding back. They don't fight fair. The American nightmare had arrived in Kepler 442, and it was about to show the Draconian Empire what human warfare really looked like. Admiral Bay's voice echoed across all frequencies as the first wave of autonomous hunter-killer drones began their attack. You wanted to see our true nature? Commander, observe and learn what happens when humans decide to stop being nice. Commander Vexstar stared at his tactical display in growing confusion. The small objects launching from the human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen before. They twisted and turned through space in impossible patterns. Never flying in straight lines, never following predictable paths. Tactical analysis, he ordered his weapons officer. Sir, the objects appear to be automated fighters. No life signs detected. They're approximately the size of our interceptors, but their movement patterns are completely random. Our targeting. COMPUTERs cannot predict their flight paths. Vexstar's yellow eyes narrowed. Random movements are inefficient. No competent military force would waste energy on such tactics. Begin standard anti-fighter operations. The Draconian fleet opened fire with their point defense systems. Streams of plasma bolts filled the space between the two fleets, creating a deadly light show against the darkness. The Draconian gunners were among the best in the galaxy, trained from childhood to hit fast-moving targets. They missed almost every shot. The human drones seemed to dance between the plasma streams, rolling and spinning in ways that defied military logic. When the Draconians fired where the drones were, the targets had already moved. When they fired where the drones should be, the targets went somewhere else entirely. Sir, the weapons officer reported, his voice tight with frustration, our hit ratio is less than 5%. These targets are impossible to track. Increase fire rate, Vexstar commanded. Saturate the area with plasma. They cannot dodge everything. But as the Draconian ships increased their rate of fire, something unexpected happened. The human drones stopped trying to dodge. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Draconian fleet, flying straight into the wall of plasma. Fire. Sir, multiple drone contacts lost, the tactical officer reported. They are flying directly into our defensive fire and being destroyed. Vexstar smiled grimly. Finally, they show their true nature. Suicide attacks are the last resort of desperate cowards. His smile vanished when the first drone reached his fleet. The small craft didn't try to avoid the Draconian cruiser Dawn's Fury. Instead, it flew directly into the ship's hull and detonated. The explosion was unlike anything in Vexstar's experience. It wasn't the simple chemical blast of a conventional warhead. The drone had somehow compressed a nuclear reaction into a package the size of a fighter craft. Dawn's Fury vanished in a bowl of white-hot plasma. Multiple contacts incoming, the tactical officer shouted. They're all on collision courses. Across the Draconian fleet, the human drones slammed into ship after ship. Each impact produced the same devastating result: a nuclear explosion that could destroy vessels 10 times the drone's size. The Draconian formation, which had been perfect minutes before, dissolved into chaos as captains tried desperately to avoid the suicidal attackers, but the drones were just the beginning, Admiral. The Bei Sung-Yan watched the first phase of the battle from the bridge of her flagship, the dreadnought Inchin. The ship was larger than any vessel the Draconians had ever built, its black hull bristling with weapons that officially didn't exist. "Phase 1 complete," her tactical officer reported. "Enemy formation disrupted. Drone strikes have eliminated 17 vessels. Begin Phase 2, Admiral Bei ordered. Activate quantum disruption systems." Across the human fleet, weapons that violated several galactic treaties powered up. The quantum disruption field was humanity's answer to alien shield technology. Instead of trying to overpower enemy defenses, it simply made those defenses stop. Working. Commander Vexstar felt his flagship shudder as an invisible wave passed through it. "Engineering report," he demanded. "Sir, our shields are failing. Old defensive systems are experiencing quantum interference. We cannot maintain protective barriers." Vexstar stared at his displays in disbelief. Quantum disruption technology was theoretical. The greatest scientists in the galaxy had declared it impossible to build. Yet somehow, the humans had not only built it, they had mounted it on their warships. "All ships, emergency power to shields," he ordered across the fleet communication system. "Sir," his engineering officer replied, "it's not a power problem. The disruption field is interfering with the quantum matrix that generates our shields. As long as the human ships maintain the field, our defenses will not function. Without their shields, the Draconian ships were naked before the human weapons." Admiral Bei's fleet moved forward with predatory grace, their dark hulls sliding through space like hunting sharks. "All ships begin Wolfpack operations," Admiral Bei commanded. "Target isolated vessels, coordinate alpha strikes, show them what human tactics look like." The human ships didn't attack in the honorable Draconian manner with single combat and glorious charges. Instead, they moved like a pack of wolves, surrounding individual Draconian vessels and attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. The Draconian cruiser, Honor's Edge, found itself facing 6 human ships at once. The cruiser's captain tried to turn to face his attackers, but there were too many of them. Plasma beams and missile strikes came from every direction, overwhelming the ship's ability to respond. Honor's Edge exploded in less than 30 seconds. The same scene repeated across the battlefield. Draconian ships that had dominated alien fleets for centuries found themselves helpless against human pack tactics. The humans didn't fight fair. They didn't give their enemies a chance to respond. They simply surrounded and destroyed. Commander Vexstar watched his fleet being systematically dismantled and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. The humans hadn't retreated from his fleet out of cowardice. They had been positioning themselves. They hadn't shown fear when faced with superior numbers. They had been drawing him into a trap. "Sir," Captain Zarthok approached with grim news, "we've lost 43 ships in the last 10 minutes. The human tactics are unlike anything in our military doctrine. They coordinate their attacks with impossible precision." Vexstar looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. The human fleet moved as a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be. When they attacked, they struck with perfect timing from multiple angles. When they retreated, they covered each other with overlapping fields of fire. "How are they coordinating so perfectly?" Vexstar demanded. "Unknown, sir. Their communication traffic is minimal. They appear to be using some form of direct mind link between their ships." What Vexstar didn't know was that the human ships weren't coordinating through communication at all. Each vessel was controlled by an artificial intelligence that could think 1,000 times faster than any biological brain. The AI systems shared information instantaneously, calculated optimal attack patterns in microseconds, and executed complex maneuvers with inhuman precision. The Draconians were fighting the future of warfare, and they were losing badly. Sir, the weapons officer called out, the human flagship is moving toward us. Should we concentrate fire? Vexstar looked at the massive black dreadnought approaching his position. The ship was beautiful in its own terrifying way, all smooth curves and hidden weapons. It moved through space with the confidence of an apex predator. Yes, he said quietly. All remaining ships target the human flagship. If we can destroy their command vessel, perhaps we can break their coordination. 23 Draconian ships turned their weapons toward the Inchin. Plasma cannons and missile tubes locked onto the advancing dreadnought. At Vexstar's command, they fired everything they had. Admiral Bay watched the incoming fire with professional interest. Activate defensive systems, she ordered calmly. The space around the Inchin suddenly filled with movement. Tiny interceptor. Drones launched from hidden bays, their micro-lasers shooting down incoming missiles with impossible accuracy. Energy barriers that bent light itself deflected plasma beams into harmless directions. The massive dreadnought continued its advance without slowing down. Return fire, Admiral Bay commanded. Show them what a real warship can do. The Inchin's main guns fired for the first time in the battle. The weapons were unlike anything the Draconians had seen. Instead of plasma or missiles, they fired concentrated beams of pure energy that could cut through starship hulls like knives through paper. 3 Draconian ships simply ceased to exist, sliced in half by weapons that made their own seem primitive. By comparison, Commander Vexstar finally understood what Ambassador Lee Hyan had tried to warn the Galactic Council about. Humans weren't weak. They weren't cowardly. They had been holding back. They had been showing mercy. And now the mercy was over. All ships, emergency retreat, Vexstar ordered. Fall back to the system edge. We cannot win this battle. But even in retreat, the Draconians found no mercy. The human ships pursued them with relentless efficiency, picking off stragglers and damaged vessels. Of the 127 ships that had entered the Kepler 442 system, only 12 would escape to tell the tale. As his flagship limped toward the hyperspace jump point, Commander Vexstar sent a desperate message to the Draconian High. Command, human military assessment was completely wrong. They are not weak. They are not cowardly. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Behind him, the human fleet regrouped around New Sol, their mission complete. The colony was safe. The Draconian threat was neutralized. And the galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating humanity. Admiral Bay stood on her bridge, watching the last Draconian ships disappear into hyperspace. Send a message to Earth, she ordered. Mission accomplished. The nightmare has been demonstrated. Awaiting further orders. The first phase of America's response to galactic rejection was complete. Soon, every species in the galaxy would know what happened when humans stopped being nice. The news traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within hours of the Battle of Kepler 442, every major civilization knew what had happened. A complete Draconian fleet had been destroyed by humans, the species that the Galactic Council had dismissed as cowardly had just achieved the impossible. On the crystal world of Luminara Prime, Luxara floated in her meditation chamber, reviewing the battle recordings for the 15th time. The crystalline being's energy form flickered with patterns of deep concern as she watched the systematic destruction of Draconian forces. The footage showed things that should not have been possible. Human weapons that ignored the laws of physics, as the crystalline collective understood them. Tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Technology that should have taken centuries to develop. Analysis complete, announced her chief scientist, Chrysothen. The human quantum disruption technology appears to be at least 50 years ahead of our most advanced research. Their artificial intelligence systems show capabilities that exceed our best predictions by several orders of magnitude. Luxara's crystalline form pulsed with worry. How did we miss this? Our intelligence networks are the most sophisticated in the galaxy. How did an entire species hide technology this advanced? Unknown, Chrysothen replied. But there's something else. The battle recordings show evidence of weapon systems that weren't used. The humans appear to have held back even during this engagement. Held back? Luxara's energy pattern shifted to show confusion. They destroyed an entire draconian fleet. How could they have held back? Chrysothem projected a detailed analysis of the human ships. Energy signatures indicate much larger power cores than were actually utilized, weapon systems that never fired, defensive capabilities that weren't activated. We estimate the humans used less than 30% of their actual combat capability. Luxara fell silent, her crystalline form dimming as she processed this information. If the humans had destroyed the Draconians while holding back, what would happen when they stopped restraining themselves? On the insectoid world of Hyvenash, Queen Zikara called an emergency gathering of all sub-queens. The massive underground chamber filled with the chittering sounds of a billion insects as the hive clusters discussed the human threat. "The tactical analysis is clear," announced War Queen Vexith, her mandibles clicking with agitation. "Human warfare follows no patterns. We understand. They use weapons we cannot predict. They employ tactics that violate our basic understanding of military doctrine." Queen Zikara's enormous form shifted on her throne. The mother of trillions had lived for over 1,000 years and had never seen anything like the human battle recordings. "Show me the drone attacks again," she commanded. The holographic display showed the human drones performing their suicidal attacks on Draconian ships. But what disturbed the queen wasn't the attacks themselves. It was the complete lack of self-preservation instinct the drones displayed. "These are not piloted by living beings," she observed. "But they are not simple machines either. They show tactical awareness, adaptive behavior, creative problem-solving. How is this possible?" War Queen Vexith clicked her mandibles nervously. "The humans appear to have created artificial minds that can think like living beings but fight like machines. They have no fear, no hesitation, no survival instinct to interfere with their mission." Queen Zikara's compound eyes focused on the display with growing horror. The hive clusters had always relied on overwhelming numbers to win their battles. But what use were numbers against an enemy that could create unlimited warriors without the need for birth, growth, or training? "Immediate order," the Queen announced. "All border fleets are to withdraw from human space. No engagement with human forces under any circumstances. We must reconsider our entire military doctrine." On the gas giant rings of Airtos the Ethereal, Conclave held their first emergency session in 300 years. The ancient energy beings rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger species, but the human demonstration had shaken them from their usual indifference. Elder Void Whisper spoke first, his form barely visible against the cosmic background. "The humans have revealed capabilities that approach our own ancient technologies. This is unprecedented for such a young species." Elder Starsong's melodic voice carried notes of concern. "More troubling is their restraint. The weapons they displayed in the battle represent only a fraction of what our sensors detect in their possession. They have planet crackers, star killers, reality warping devices that they chose not to use." The assembled elders pondered this information in silence. The ethereal conclave had technologies that could reshape solar systems, but they had achieved such power only after millions of years of evolution. The humans had reached similar capabilities in mere millennia. "The question," Elder Void Whisper continued, "is not whether they are dangerous. The question is whether they can be controlled or reasoned with." Elder Timechu's voice carried the weight of eons. "Analysis of their behavior suggests they prefer diplomatic solutions. But when diplomacy fails, they respond with total warfare. This makes them unpredictable and therefore extremely dangerous." Meanwhile, on Earth, General Kang Haijin stood before the United Nations Security Council, delivering a briefing that would change the course of galactic history. "Distinguished delegates," she began, "the engagement at Kepler 442 was a limited demonstration using restricted rules of engagement. Our forces were ordered to minimize collateral damage and avoid unnecessary destruction. This was not representative of our full military capability. The Security Council members listened in stunned silence as General Kong outlined the true scope of Project American Nightmare. The Nightmare Division currently operates 3,000 autonomous warships, each equipped with artificial intelligence systems capable of independent tactical decision-making. Our deep space weapons platforms can engage targets across multiple star systems simultaneously. Our planet-based installations can project force to any point within 50 light-years of Earth. She paused to let this information sink in before continuing. More importantly, we have developed weapon systems that can neutralize entire civilizations without firing a shot. Economic disruption technology that can collapse interstellar trade networks. Communication jamming systems that can isolate entire species from their colonies. Psychological warfare capabilities that can induce panic on a galactic scale. The Chinese representative raised his hand. General, are you saying we could defeat the entire Galactic Council if necessary? General. Kang's expression remained neutral. Sir, we could defeat the Galactic Council without using our most advanced weapons. The technology demonstrated at Kepler 442 represents early generation systems, developed during the first years after alien contact. Our current capabilities are significantly more advanced. President Park Ji-won received 17 urgent communications. Within the first day after the battle, every major galactic civilization wanted to establish immediate diplomatic contact. Species that had laughed at humanity's application to the Defense Coalition now begged for peace treaties. The Zephyrian Trade Federation offered exclusive trade agreements. The machine intelligence known as the Nexus Council requested technology exchange programs. Even the proud Draconian Empire sent representatives to discuss peace terms, but the most significant communication came from the Galactic Council itself. The speaker, who had presided over humanity's rejection, sent a personal message to President Park. Honored President of Earth, the message began. The Galactic Council recognizes that our previous assessment of human capabilities was incomplete. We would be honored to reconsider humanity's application to join the Defense Coalition. We also wish to discuss immediate establishment of mutual defense treaties and technology sharing agreements. President Park read the message with grim satisfaction. 3 months ago, these same beings had declared humans too weak to defend the galaxy. Now they feared that humans were too dangerous to leave uncontrolled. Ambassador Li Haiyan, still on Nexus Prime, found himself suddenly the most important diplomat in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species requested private meetings. Each one offered treaties, trade agreements, territory concessions, anything that might ensure their species remained on humanity's good side. The irony was not lost on him. Humanity had wanted to join the galactic community as partners in peace and exploration. Instead, they had been forced to prove their worthiness through demonstration of their capacity for destruction. As he prepared for his return to the Galactic Council chamber, Li Haiyan reflected on the words he had spoken during humanity's rejection. You have never seen what happens when we choose to let go. The galaxy had seen now. The question was whether they had learned the right lesson. The next phase of Project American Nightmare was already being planned. If the galaxy wanted to see what humans were truly capable of, they were about to get a much more comprehensive demonstration. The Battle of Kepler 442 had been a warning shot. The real nightmare was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442, Ambassador Li Haiyan walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. The same hallways that had echoed with alien laughter during his first visit now fell silent as he passed. Representatives from dozens of species bowed respectfully, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and cautious hope. The massive doors to the council chamber opened before him, revealing a scene very different from his previous appearance. The same alien representatives sat in their designated areas, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Gone was the casual arrogance, the dismissive chatter, the confident superiority. In its place was respectful attention and nervous anticipation. Ambassador Li took his position at the center of the chamber, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood Admiral Bae Seung-yeon, representing Earth's military forces, and Dr. Song Min-young, now appointed as humanity's chief xenological advisor. The three humans faced the assembled aliens with calm confidence. The council speaker floated in his sphere of blue light, his ancient voice carrying a weight of newfound respect. The Galactic Council recognizes Ambassador Lee Hyun of Earth and requests his response to our formal invitation for humanity to join the Defense Coalition with full membership status. Before Lee Hyun could respond, Commander Vexstar rose from his seat. The Draconian commander looked very different from the proud warrior who had first dismissed humanity as cowards. His scales bore the marks of battle, and his yellow eyes held the wisdom that comes only from surviving a near-total defeat. "Honored Council," Vexstar began, his voice heavy with hard-earned humility, "before we proceed, I must address this assembly about the true nature of human warfare." The chamber fell completely silent. Every being present knew that Vexstar was one of the few survivors of the Kepler 442 battle, making his testimony invaluable. "I came before this council 6 months ago and declared humans to be weak and cowardly. I presented evidence of their apparent reluctance to engage in total warfare. I convinced you all that they lacked the warrior spirit necessary for galactic defense." Vexstar paused, his gaze moving across the assembled representatives. "I was wrong, catastrophically, completely wrong. The humans are not weak, they are not cowardly. They are the most dangerous military force this galaxy has ever seen, precisely because they choose when to reveal that danger." The Draconian commander activated a holographic display showing footage from the battle. The assembled aliens watched in fascination and horror as human forces systematically dismantled the Draconian fleet. "What you see here is not the desperate last stand of a weak species," Vexstar continued. "This is a carefully controlled demonstration by a civilization that could have destroyed my entire fleet in minutes if they had chosen to do so. They showed restraint even while proving their superiority." Luxara of the Crystalline Collective rose to speak, her energy form flickering with complex patterns. "The Crystalline Collective has conducted extensive analysis of the human demonstration at Kepler 442. Our findings support Commander Vexstar's assessment. The humans used approximately 30% of their apparent capability during that engagement." She gestured to her own holographic display showing energy readings and tactical analysis. "More concerning is our discovery that the weapons systems they revealed represent only the most basic level of their military technology. Our long-range sensors have detected evidence of installations and technologies that exceed our current understanding of physics." Queen Zikara's representative, War Queen Vexif, clicked her mandibles nervously as she addressed the council. "The hive clusters have reached a unanimous decision. Humanity represents an existential threat to any species that chooses to oppose them. But more importantly, they represent an invaluable ally to those who choose cooperation over conflict." Ambassador Lee Hyun listened to the testimonies with professional detachment. The same beings who had rejected humanity for being too peaceful now spoke of them with fear and respect. The irony was bitter but not unexpected. Finally, the council speaker addressed him directly. "Ambassador Lee, the council has heard testimony regarding the true capabilities of your species. We formally apologize for our previous misjudgment and extend a unanimous invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Defense Coalition with full membership privileges." Lee Hyun stepped forward, his voice calm and measured when he replied, "Honored Council, humanity appreciates the Council's revised assessment of our capabilities. However, before we can accept membership in the Defense Coalition, we have conditions that must be met." The chamber stirred with nervous energy. The aliens had expected humanity to gratefully accept the invitation they had previously been denied. "First," Lee Hyun continued, "humanity requires complete equality within the coalition structure. No species will hold authority over human forces. No alien commander will have the right to order human ships into battle. We will contribute to galactic defense as equal partners, not as subordinates." The council speaker nodded quickly. "Agreed without reservation." Second, humanity requires the establishment of a new galactic peace protocol. All member species must agree to diplomatic resolution procedures before military action can be authorized. No species will be permitted to attack another without first exhausting all peaceful alternatives. This condition caused more discussion among the alien representatives. Several species had built their reputations on military conquest and expansion. The idea of being required to try diplomacy first was revolutionary. Admiral Bay stepped forward to address this concern. The peace protocol is not negotiable. Humanity has seen what happens when civilizations choose warfare as their first option, rather than their last resort. We will not be party to an organization that permits unnecessary violence. Commander Vextar stood again. The Draconian Empire supports the Human Peace Protocol. Our experience at Kepler 442 has taught us the value of choosing diplomacy over aggression. One by one, the other species voiced their agreement. None wanted to risk being excluded from an alliance that included humanity's military capabilities. Third, Li Haiyan announced, humanity requires the right to establish colonies in any unclaimed system within 50 light-years of our current territory. These systems will be considered human space and will be defended as such. Again, quick. Agreement from the Council. The aliens had learned not to test human territorial claims. Dr. Song stepped forward to present the final condition. Fourth, humanity requires the establishment of a new Galactic Ethics Committee with representatives from all species. This committee will have the authority to investigate and address crimes against sentient beings, regardless of which species commits them. This condition caused the most discussion. Several species had engaged in practices that would not meet human ethical standards. The idea of being held accountable to a multi-species ethics committee was uncomfortable for many, but the alternative to accepting human conditions was facing human opposition, and no species in the galaxy wanted that responsibility. The council speaker called for a formal vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's conditions for Defense Coalition membership? 12 voices responded in unison. Agreed. The vote is unanimous, the speaker announced. Humanity is welcomed as a full member of the Galactic Defense Coalition. Under the stated conditions, Ambassador Lee nodded formally. Humanity accepts membership in the coalition. We look forward to working with all species toward a more peaceful and prosperous galaxy. As the formal ceremony concluded, Li Haiyan delivered humanity's final message to the assembled aliens. Honored representatives, 6 months ago you judged humanity based on incomplete information. You saw our restraint and mistook it for weakness. You observed our preference for peace and assumed we lacked the ability to wage war. He paused, his gaze moving across each alien representative. Today you know better. You have seen what happens when humanity chooses to demonstrate our capabilities. You have witnessed the fury we can unleash when our people are threatened. You understand that our choice to seek peaceful solutions comes from strength, not weakness. The chamber remained perfectly silent as Lee continued. We hope this lesson was sufficient. We prefer to be partners rather than conquerors, allies rather than enemies. But never forget what you have learned about the cost of forcing humanity to abandon restraint. Admiral Bay added her own words to the message. The American nightmare sleeps, but it never dies. It waits patiently for the day when diplomacy fails and survival demands its awakening. We hope that day never comes, but we remain ready if it does. As the 3 humans left the council chamber, the alien representatives sat in contemplative silence. They had gained humanity as an ally, but they had also learned a lesson that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. The strongest predator was often the one that chose not to hunt. The most dangerous warrior was the one who preferred peace. And the most powerful civilization was the one that had the wisdom to use restraint. Years later, historians would mark the day of humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Defense Coalition as the beginning of the longest period of peace the galaxy had ever known. The mere existence of human military capabilities served as a deterrent. to large-scale conflicts, while human diplomatic initiatives resolved disputes before they could escalate to warfare. Commander Vexstar, now serving as a liaison officer between the Draconian Empire and human forces, often reflected on the events that had changed his understanding of strength and courage. In his private quarters aboard the joint human-Draconian patrol ship Unity, he kept a simple plaque with words that had become his personal philosophy. True courage is not the absence of fear. It is the wisdom to know when to fight and when to show mercy. The greatest victory is the war that never needs to be fought. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's capacity for destruction. But more importantly, it had learned to respect humanity's choice to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm, to seek understanding rather than dominance. The American nightmare had served its purpose. It had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of when pushed too far. Now, it could return to its slumber, a guardian watching over a more peaceful universe. In the end, humanity had achieved what they had always wanted, a place among the stars as partners in exploration and discovery. They had simply needed to prove that their desire for peace came from strength, not weakness. The galaxy was a better place for that lesson, even if the learning had been painful for those who had underestimated the quiet species from a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star.